having our green spaces today with Hedera and DOVU and power transitions. We also have a great panel of people, including Jordon Freed and Tom Screen and Wes Geisenberger from the Hbar Foundation. We also have Jason Atwell, who's a developer advocate for Hedera, on our panel, and many more. And we'll have a couple of updates towards the end of the hour. So I'd like to start with Dovu and Matt and ask you to introduce yourself to the community. Matt?
Well, thank you so much for having us. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. So a little bit about me. So I'm Matt, the CTO for Dovu. And with regards to kind of the work with Hedera I've been kind of heavily involved with a number of different projects, from my Trust Enterprises API and developer tools, the hackathon earlier this year, and I've worked with a number of different projects in the ecosystem in various capacities. With Dovu in particular, we are building the trust layer for carbon offset integrity. But if we unpack that for a second, we are creating an end-to-end experience for project owners like farmers to onboard to us and sell carbon as offsets. This process is all wrapped up in what we call an audit trail. So there's an on-chain proof to every actor involved in the confirmation of ongoing carbon storage all the way to the retirement of a given credit. And on the kind of the buy side, all of our credits are sold through our marketplace, which is coming out this quarter for public release. And we're really excited about, the future of Hedera and our kind of part in we can play. Thank you.
And I'd like to ask Jiro if he would like to introduce the community to what Power Transition is up to.
Yes, sure. Thank you very much, Elizabeth. Well, I mean, we've been involved with the Hedera team right from the very beginning. We were like developing on swirls back in the day, and been evolving ever since. And we've been dedicated to the energy sector. And as you know, energy and electricity especially is like megalithic, power stations distributing electricity in a sort of hub and spoke style through these big transmission lines to customers and asking them for money. This is very, very, it's a very inefficient, very expensive and highly polluting way of doing business. And now it's becoming much more decentralized in Europe, North America, etc. And it's becoming more like a distributed renewable energy network. And of course, it needs a distributed software system to support that. So that's where we're at.
Well, I know that you're planning on doing the microgrid management and using peer-to-peer. And that's very appealing to all of, I'm from California, and we all have, our roofs with solar panels, but it's very hard to get the excess energy that we produce in our homes to our neighbors. And Power Transition is trying to solve that with the peer-to-peer energy trading, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, California is a great example because it's so nice and sunny there. I mean, you could have microgrids all over California. If you're living in Los Angeles, you can have a Santa Monica microgrid where the community's sharing and taking advantage of the electricity it's producing, and sharing in the profits and the efficiencies. The secret of our microgrid actually is, first of all, getting the DLT to speak directly to at the IoT level to energy industry instrumentation like smart meters, inverters, battery logic, etc. That's the important step that we've been really, investing our time and efforts into. And then once you are talking directly to the equipment, then you're at liberty to tokenize energy, to trade it with fully fungible tokens, to tokenize equipment and electricity. So, it's a huge step forward, and the whole community can join in and benefit.
It's absolutely necessary. It's a bridge that we should have built like today and yesterday, but definitely into the future, because sharing Do you find what is your biggest obstacle in having this adopted? The power companies themselves?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the power industry is sort of like a legacy industry, and it's very conservative, very reactionary, and has a lot of regulation. And they do realize that they do have to change the regulation with the change in, the sort of the infrastructure and the model of distributed energy. And, things like the COP26 that's happening in Glasgow this year following, the Paris Accords of, reducing the amount of greenhouse gases we're emitting and the global temperature. This comes at an opportune moment, exactly the right time for us to apply this technology so that the transition and the sort of redefinition of the regulations can happen quickly and efficiently and in a secure and confident environment.
I wonder if you, Matt, have a comment on that, because your whole project is about carbon emissions. So do you see a synergy between you and power transition in terms of energy creation?
I think at Dovuz we're very much focused on the offset arena, providing opportunities for farmers and project owners really to get access to new income streams. That's really our focus. And but with the nature of Hedera and how green it is, it's just this is the one of the best networks to utilize for our needs really.
Yes, and how efficient? Like, I know that Buberry, you also do. You have an interest in soil conservation and uh, uh, carbon emissions. What would you like to ask Matt about Dovuz?
Yeah. Hey, Matt, how's it going? This is Brandon from Buberry Worldwide. I know I've worked in the space for like about 7 years now, and the proof for the carbon sequestration and stuff like that being questionable, and then my work from that kind of growing out from there as like what we're doing around education. With your farming projects, how much of it is it based just on carbon sequestration, and how much of it is based on like the actual farms going beyond that, kind of like really improved projects? I know that was something listed in your layout that you followed up with third parties and stuff like that. So I'd just like to hear a little bit more about that, like how invested you are in these farmers and using that method of investing in them and the carbon offset to really grow what's coming out from these farms, the culture around it, if you will.
Yeah, I think it's worth noting that our investment in farmers generally is that our goal is to kind of build up this trust layer for carbon offset integrity. So our kind of bold vision is to allow like any project, farmers, people growing trees, like peat bogs, those kind of things. But with regards to kind of methodologies, all of the methodologies we use are kind of backed up by independent scientific bodies. So it's all around not only investing in farmers, making sure that their behavior using regenerative agriculture is by the book.
Elizabeth, if I may quickly say something, a comment you made just before.
Yes, please.
Yeah, you said, was there any sort of possible collaboration and, sort of working together on projects? I think that there's enormous scope to work on projects together in all of these different, actors and players and contributors, Buberry and all these different people. And I think what's important is to incentivize the customer. And as a unified force, we can really think of great incentive schemes on the DLT layer. And I think working together is the secret.
Well, I think collaboration in terms of the whole network of Hedera is the key to that. Don't you, Tom?
Yeah, I agree. I was just thinking, actually, I mean, we do a little bit of work in the environment and wildlife industry in the UK, and I'm aware of, certainly with like the larger landowners, the big estates, they're typically driven by regulation. You know, they don't like to do things until they really have to. So I was just sort of, I suppose, question to Matt really is well, maybe Buberry as well can talk to this, is like, what barriers to entry do you see there, and I suppose how do you incentivize that, or how do you try and get that adoption, or what are the barriers to adoption there?
Yeah, I think this is like a conversation on the supply side. So Irvine, our CEO, has links into the National Farmers Union and carbon offsetting, turning areas, sections of their farm into kind of sequester projects even, is a real hot topic right now, and it's all around. At the end of the day, a farmer wants money in his pocket, in their pocket, and so it all comes down to that. Is the factor. Is there a project out there that can join up with Dovu, or as in is a farmer willing to join with Dovu in order to kind of go through this? And the defining factor is yes, if we can get money in their pocket.
Yeah. So I mean, it might be a stupid question, but do they have to change the use of their land? You know, do they have to like stop farming on a section of it to plant more trees or something, or how does that work?
Well, there are a number of different techniques to do with regenerative farming, and a farmer has a choice of whether they want to convert their entire farm. But what, through our research, it's just a focus in a kind of small area. So it's changing techniques to effectively turn soil from a depleted state in terms of carbon storage to replete it such that it can gain more carbon over time.
I think has Buberry got his hand up? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, one of the things I was wondering, and you talk about barriers, one of the things that we came across, because we're so new into this space, literally my partner brought this up in about March of this year, and we've just kind of been nonstop. But one of the things we're concerned about is this being another way to lock up land, really on an ownership basis of who has money first. That there being like, you know, so some things about that if people are just sitting on carbon and the measures and things like that just one of the barriers to kind of point out that we were kind of concerned about, and needing some more, like, obviously, like, the staking is so crucial and things like that for money to come in. It is absolutely the first steps of what farmers need. They need to be able to keep their land and things like that, and then the ongoing support in the other projects. So that's where I really think, like Dovu with the marketplace and supporting the farmer projects, I'm really excited to see a lot more about those things and how in depth, because I think that's where all the projects start coming together, is we're all building like little tiny pieces together that work really well together. And so that's what I'm excited about, some collaboration in the future, but just some of those barriers to kind of watch out for. And how has your team like addressed that or thought about that?
With, like I say, farmers and other projects, and there is a lot of excitement there. And one thing we've kind of noticed is that we want to support smaller communities, like homegrown farms, rather than farms that have been bought out by larger organizations and things. And to kind of develop those small kind of communities and those small ecosystems.
You know, could I get Wes to comment on how the Hbar Foundation sees this carbon issue?
Yeah, I mean, this is a really important part of how the Hbar Foundation is going to work with different grant recipients or different community members. We've made pretty large investments in not only things like open source code, working with Hedera, even before the Hbar Foundation existed, in the Open Source Guardian that there was a webinar on, I think, about a week or so ago, in partnership with Envision. And beyond that, we've actually engaged in research and development on these types of assets, whether it's a carbon offset or removal, or a renewable energy credit, in partnership with Block Science. And we actually just released a blog post earlier this week, outlining a new type of DeFi mechanism called an automated regression market, or an ARM. And that type of work we think is really going to pave the path for how we exchange these types of assets in carbon markets, where we really still want to maintain the granular traceability to a specific farm or plot of land, or in the case of, say, like a renewable energy credit, or even energy itself, to specific kilowatt hours or megawatt hours, which is how you measure renewable energy credit in the case of something. Case of projects like power transition, as opposed to Dovuz, where we want to basically have that granular traceability, solve some real world problems of how we exchange the value that we're creating here and share it on ledger in a fully auditable way.
Wow, that really ties into what Jiro is talking about with his peer-to-peer credits.
Oh yeah, this is music to my ears, definitely. And the thing about it is that in our microgrid technology, we've been exploring so many different areas, and a lot of this stuff is straight out of the box. Really, I mean, for instance, people are wondering, well, where does my energy come from? Is it really green? Well, green energy certification on Hedera is straight out of the box. We certify all our energy with a token. And also in terms of carbon, we can quantify the amount of carbon through the carbon factor and getting meter readings. We get very accurate meter readings, and we can calculate and quantify carbon. And once that's quantified and we've tokenized the carbon, basically, it can be traded just like anything with a fully fungible token. And Hedera also is a perfect platform for auctioning. It's a perfect auction platform, and we can create an open global carbon auction market, which is not regulated necessarily by government. And I think it's a wonderful concept.
Just out of interest, can you do that? We've obviously been talking about sort of power peer-to-peer grids in residential settings. Can that apply to more industrial settings as well? So either, and I'm thinking on land and also, ports and all around the world, potentially?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We integrate directly into smart meter technology. So you can put a smart meter on, say, power generation from wind or solar. And you can also put a smart meter on energy that's coming in from the grid, which might be from oil or gas, and associated with a certain carbon factor, which the government has to issue. And the plant itself that's using the electricity has a meter. And so you can calculate where the energy is coming from that you're using in your plant. And you can calculate exactly the amount of energy you're getting from the grid, from your renewable sources, and you can calculate the amount of carbon you're generating, carbon dioxide equivalent, as your factory is running. So there's all sorts of things you can do, and amazing calculations you can make with smart meter technology that you've integrated directly into with the DLT.
Yeah, and so I suppose if I'm in the rainy but somewhat windy UK and we don't have so many solar panels, if I was a farmer and I had some wind turbines on my farm, then actually we could use that technology there as well as the carbon sort of assessment of my land, and that could all go towards my carbon credits, presumably. That's potentially where it could join up.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that, just give me a use case and we'll work on it. Really, it's a matter of taking, projects and studying the projects and putting the instrumentation in there and start measuring and start trading, basically.
Oh, that's given me some ideas. Thank you.
So
No worries. And with this smart meter technology, the interfaces are becoming very, very interesting. That you can, extract information and both ways. In fact, directly into DLT backend for extracting information and monitoring as well as control.
Go ahead, Jordon, and give us your comment.
More of a question. I was reading the Dovu website. I'd love to hear more about the API for offsetting a crypto transaction. Would that be something like you're purchasing a Bitcoin on a particular exchange and you can calculate in real time how much it would cost to offset that. How would that work? I'm curious about that functionality.
Thank you, Jordan. Absolute pleasure to meet you finally.
Definitely.
Yeah, so there's kind of a number of different strategies we are kind of going down, kind of the path and exploring. Firstly, is to do with kind of carbon market cap. If some of you haven't seen that, I highly recommend you check out the tool. And what it does is it basically tracks the carbon debt of every single Ethereum token that's active today. And it does it like, it picks up this data every 6 to 8 hours or whatever. And from that, we have generated, we've basically figured out on a proof of work system what the basic ratio is to say for every unit of unit of kind of value that's transferred on chain, what you'd have to do to offset that. And it's a very interesting way to kind of estimate your costs when it comes to kind of creating it through like a service or a SaaS or whatever. And so roughly speaking, that unit is around 1 to 2,000. So let's say for every $20 of value, there's about a cent of kind of offset. And that's something that we've approached our clients with to kind of use that model. And on the other kind of side of things is the kind of crypto payments. And now our broad vision is to utilize the Dove token as a means for micropayments and instant offsets. That is a brand vision. That's one of my goals. I would love to do that, but it all comes down to token liquidity at the end of the day. And so that kind of feature is a long way off right now, and it all depends on the market. It all depends on if our market can support volumes. So the idea of offsetting over an API is something that's always on our mind, and it all depends on the market. But estimations is something we can do out of the box.
Really interesting.
Yeah.
Really interesting. I'd love to get your thoughts too. So, I mean, obviously, I think everyone here is following the space. Something that always it strikes me as pretty interesting is you look at WBTC, for example, wrapped Bitcoin. What they're doing there is they're essentially it's BitGo behind this. It's a custodied account on BitGo that has 13. I think today it's like 13 plus billion issued. It's like almost 10,000 Bitcoin circulating on largely the Ethereum network. And the Ethereum network is obviously much greener. I think it's like takes 1/6 of the energy of the Bitcoin network, I believe. Have you thought about wrapped assets, basically a green Bitcoin on Hedera? It seems like you'd be well placed to, if you're using Bitcoin native to a proof of work blockchain, that's where the problem is, right? It's burdensome. I'm curious if you guys have looked into that.
Yeah, I mean, I think also I will move on. I'll kind of talk about another thing as well, but absolutely, we've thought about that, and like I say, have a look at carbon market cap, and it gives you an idea. Like you can basically search for any of your favorite tokens, and it gives you an idea of their entire debt in tons and in debt of value. But yeah, I think fundamentally, all these assets that can get locked up, moved across, that Hashport bridge, and then minted on the other side, you've got a asset that has been bridged all the way to a much greener kind of market, a much greener solution. Now, going back to carbon market kind of cap, one thing we will probably be integrating mid next year is this idea of tokenized debt for a given token. So projects would be able to look at carbon market cap, being able to pick up their debt, and being able to talk with their communities and create marketing campaigns about bringing down their debt entirely through the purchase of offsets or other kind of such things.
That's very cool.
So just to pick up on that, so you're saying so you're saying you could have a Bitcoin, you put it into Ethereum as a wrapped Bitcoin, and then via Hashport we're going to actually be able to wrap that and have them on Hedera as essentially double wrapped Bitcoin.
That's yeah.
That sounds Yeah.
It's so crazy, but yeah, in theory.
I haven't spoken with the Hashboard team. I'm really curious to speak with them and better understand that. But I think it's just such a killer use case for our platform here. Like you look at where WBTC is today. Obviously, there's a big with DeFi, a lot of DeFi forming around Ethereum and other networks. There's a big need to want to use WBTC as a tool there. WBTC using the Hedera token service, I think, is just killer. I know you probably call it HBTC or something else, but a wrapped version of Bitcoin, I think, just for other reasons. If people are concerned about the carbon footprint using Bitcoin, one way is to purchase the offset. The other way is just don't use the Bitcoin blockchain, use Bitcoin, but native to another blockchain. And it just seems we're really well placed to do it. I've not had much time to look into what that would take to do, but it seems we've got a bunch of components in place forming around Hedera that this could be something that we could pull off.
Also,
just an idea.
Also, I want to kind of add that, when tokens bridge to Hedera, you have basically increased their capabilities by a magnitude. That's one of the reasons why Hedera is going to be our home network for Dove next year, or well, late this year, next year, is that you can have access to DeFi and all that kind of rich value there. And then over in the Hedera, you have the low cost and the programmability. And when the smart contracts come out next year, then, your world's really your oyster.
Wes, do you have something to say about the bridging of tokens into Hedera, into Hbars?
I came off mute for a second. I just thought, that we oftentimes talk about what can come to Hedera, but also as people, it is a two-way bridge. I also think about the carbon debt that we can even calculate as folks go and use other protocols, being able to come back and understanding, using tools like carbon market cap and other calculators, being able to understand the footprint that they're creating as they cross those bridges too, which I think is also a pretty neat use case of really having a full view of the footprint and what we can do there. So yeah, that was just my one comment, but I'll pass it back to Matt, I think, because there's probably a lot more to cover on what can come in too.
So you're saying that you can calculate those figures with the technologies we already have in place with Hedera. Is that what you're saying, Wes?
Well, leveraging different solutions for things like carbon emissions tokens, say using the Guardian, being able to understand the behaviors of tokens on Ethereum or other networks is something that's absolutely possible today for the folks building. And I think that's just an opportunity that people can take advantage of with the open source tools that we have out there and better understand their environmental footprint as they're interacting on different chains and different protocols.
And Justin, did you want to comment?
Well, yeah, I just had a general question around Dovu, and that was kind of over time. So if you have a scientist that's independent come and measure the land for, say, a peat bog or something like that, what do you do is 10 years later? Is it just a scientist that comes back and tests the land again, or is it something more like a staking model that you could implement based on like growth per area, maybe? I don't know.
Yeah, this is actually, I really love these kind of questions when we think about 10, 20, 50 years out, because we have to imagine a bright future in crypto with DLTs and blockchain being instrumental to, how we live our lives, how we move forward. Something I really enjoy about this kind of Hedera community, it's all around long-term value and long-term outlook. One of the kind of focuses that here is around the concept of durability of kind of soils and kind of carbon. This is where carbon has been stored, and you have to make sure it stays in the ground or soil. You have to make sure that there isn't a case where if trees are grown, they can't be chopped down again. And to kind of break this down a bit further, different types of auditable offsets have a durability grade, which is usually linked to years. Trees and soil are on the lower end of the spectrum because there are human factors at play. There are longer term solutions that range in the hundreds of thousands to millions of years. Now, with regards to what we're up to, our strategy is threefold for kind of farms or kind of projects generally. Is you have this onboarding of a farm, so that's gathering proof, link into a audit trail, tools like the Guardian, for instance, and finding the baseline. This could be, in total, could be over weeks or maybe months. And then beyond that, you've got this kind of the growth phase of kind of carbon stores. And so, as I alluded to before, it's repleting the soil through regenerative agriculture to slowly unlock the ability for soils to become more effective at sequestering carbon, triggering additionality such that beyond the baseline, there are actually more credits that can be minted. This would be backed with these periodic visits, and hence, if the farmer has continued to do kind of a grand job, more tokens can be kind of minted, carbon credits, and these can be purchased. Now, the problem with soils in particular is there's this depleted state, which is around 2%. Like, imagine soil, 2% of that initially can be about can hold carbon. But with regenerative farming, that can expand to like 6% of concentration. Now, beyond that, it becomes harder for soils, because that's kind of our primary focus, to continue to sequester carbon at the same rate. Because of that, it poses the problem: how do we de-risk carbon loss when incentives are removed, as you were mentioning, like Justin? So
yeah.
yeah.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. So sorry. My vision is for Dovuz to fully utilize smart contracts for ongoing audits and maintenance. Every time there is a payment for a credit, a little slither of that value would get converted to a stablecoin and is placed in some kind of yield farm. And over the time of 10, 20, 30 years, the compound interest of yield farms could, take a little bit of value and grow it. And then beyond the 30 years, then there are kind of projects like Alchemix that offer self-repaying loans against some capital, so that you could actually pay farmers for maintaining real-world value, i.e., the durability of carbon stores, through kind of self-repaying loans. This is kind of one of the items I'm really excited about the new kind of smart contract system that Hedera is bringing to the table.
And Jiro, is that a model that you're using also at Power Transitions?
I think that, we're focusing very much on the sort of energy market, which is actually energy, gas, and heat. But they are extendable to, the sort of carbon sequestration in farming communities as well. But that's not an area that we're looking at the moment. But definitely we can, there's area for collaboration here.
I was wondering, Matt, do you, as well as obviously initially perhaps sending scientists out to go and survey people's lands to do an initial assessment, do you sort of see that you might use sensors or some kind of IoT technology in there as well?
I think we're always open to IoT and those kind of factors, but my worry with those things, it's not really a one size fits all, a panacea. It isn't going to solve the problem. We live in a real world with real humans, and I kind of consider soils and farms to be almost like living, breathing organisms. So there's always going to be a human touch there. And the things that excite me about Dovuz is what happens at the edge cases, because we can create the most amazing system in the world, but there's something that's going to go wrong. Maybe a document isn't the way it should be. Maybe there is another requirement that isn't met. And it's just how do we create systems that are good and useful for humans? And yeah, that's it really.
I think Buberry has a comment. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, what I was after your last answer there and talking about kind of that long-term phase and things with your farms on board, is it wrong to think of you as almost an energy company, since you've already set up the smart contracts and watching that carbon soil and increasing to the max amount? I think of you as kind of like our power grid, and more or less you'll have that, how much energy is there, how much energy is coming in and how much you can release out.
That's an interesting perspective. we have never really considered that approach. I think we are kind of firmly still in the offsets kind of arena. Maybe I missed something, but it's all around trying to de-risk offsets, the leakage and the durability side, and trying to think of novel solutions around that.
I guess I'm saying like the offsets of the way we use energy now is that offsets in the future, kind of like how we're purchasing energy more so. I guess I don't know. I guess I see a future world with a little bit different how we use our energy around and our wealth and a lot more and stuff like that. So I feel like what you're building is just like really just such core infrastructure that everybody's going to be using in a background way. So
I think Wes can probably interject, because I think that's kind of more in the Rex arena than more what we are focusing on.
Yeah, I'm happy to comment a little bit. I think a lot of the projects that we're working on are going to use very similar core infrastructure, similar ways to audit the data for specific projects. So whether it's energy offsets or even conservation tokens, those types of mechanisms are going to be under the hood technology that all can be easily understood using concepts like DIDs and verifiable credentials to understand, well, is it inverter installed? Is it, the proper survey methodology on a farm, for example? And all this data can be read to better understand and interact with each other. The way I think it may interact, and this is just a hypothesis at this point, and as we're continuing on our path around research and development for things like ARMS, is everyone can read and understand, say, the energy that is coming from a demand perspective, and maybe they want to do offsetting with REX, or maybe they have emissions they want to offset in their supply chains with different types of offsets that they feel maybe are best for their use case, like within a specific country or county. Then in that case, if we take the information that's coming in the demand side of a supply chain, the demand side of the market, and we know the potential types of assets that are on the supply side, maybe it's something that Dovuz is producing, or maybe it's a REC that's coming or is predicted to come, and we can match those two things together. I think that may be where some of the collaboration comes from. I'm not sure that's where the folks at Buberry are asking about, but that's kind of one of the things that I see happening in the future. And there may even be automated ways to do that with some of the innovations we're researching.
I guess to follow up my IoT question, it wasn't from a purely selfish perspective, but it was just because I'd seen recently, and I can't remember if it was the Neuron guys or someone else were talking about using drones for surveying farms and using AI to, because you can sort of see quite a lot from the air, and whether or not that was a technology that could be applied. So that was one thought, but that doesn't necessarily need answering. I think my other question was, and because I'd seen a TV show a little while back, and one of the things that was said on it was about farming in the UK, and it was talking about how I know we're talking about carbon, but the nutrient depletion of soil over the next sort of 50 to 100 years is a big problem. And again, this might be tangential, but I was wondering if this mechanism, or if what you're doing directly will help with that.
Yes, absolutely it will. And it's bringing soils, we're focused on soils, but bringing these projects into a healthier state will help with the nutrient growth for sure. And to step back into your IoT question is, we've been talking to similar companies who provide satellite imagery, drone imagery to kind of augment the measurements that we have from our kind of human interaction with our land. So it's about grabbing different data points in order to come up with an estimate, and backed with a scientific policy and methodology in order to figure out these carbon counts, as it were.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with your point, what you said about having the human touch. I think it's certainly you wouldn't want to see that disappear altogether, and it would be a bit worrying if nobody actually knew how to do the work that we're programming our machines to do, although that is fast becoming the reality, isn't it?
Yes.
Jiro, did you want to comment? I saw that you had your hand.
Well, I mean, it's just a general general comment. I mean, talking about, I mean, what Matt and Tom have both said. I mean, the soil is a living thing, and farmers are basically killing it. And, you know, carbon sequestration in soil, I mean, there's things like biochar technology and things like that, but there's so many chemicals being put in to maximize, wheat harvest and stuff like that, I mean, I'm not sure how we can go about, preventing that with smart contracts and satellite imagery.
No, I think we will need to seriously rethink our objections to genetic modification of crops. I know perhaps it's a sensitive subject, but that's definitely one area where we can maximize crops' resilience to things like diseases, so that we wouldn't need so many pesticides and nasty chemicals that we need to put on there. But I say that's probably not going to help with carbon capture, but it might help with extending the soil lifetime.
Let's get a couple of community members in here. Jimmy, did you want to comment or question?
Hey, thanks for bringing me on. I wanted to make a comment to Jordon. Is he available?
Hey, how you doing?
Hey, Jordon, how's it going, man? I just wanted to say congrats on all
good.
the buzz, and it looks like if you're looking at the Hedera community, you're definitely one of the top ones, just having a blast right now. I know you guys have a lot in the pipeline. I'm not as familiar with the Canadian exchanges that you guys got listed on, but what are the reporting requirements? Are we gonna be able to look at quarterly financials and all that type of stuff?
Yeah, good question. So it's funny. I actually grew up on the Canadian border, so I never would have thought, I would have gone public in Canada. I spent a lot of time in Canada as a kid. But Canada, I mean, first, if you look at just liquidity in North American markets, Toronto is home to the third most liquid market in North America. So obviously NASDAQ and NYSE are top, but the TSX and the NEO are really up there. Listing in Canada first was a really strategic decision for us. Canada is home to very progressive regulators, and it's a very progressive marketplace. So if you've been following Canadian markets, obviously psychedelics, things of that nature, cannabis, psychedelics, and crypto has just been more accepted. Certain business models just more accepted by regulators here. Obviously, we hope that changes and we could be listed in the US. The NEO is a senior exchange. It's not like the US OTC. It is on par with the TSX, the NASDAQ, and the NYSE from a reporting and an operation perspective. So to give you an example, we do have an independent board of directors, meaning they are independent. They don't work at the company. They make decisions. So that's pretty cool. They're some world-class people who some of them were part of the Hbar ecosystem. Happy was an early investor in Hbar, Happy Walters, who's a good friend and one of our distinguished board members. We do file quarterly. So when a quarter closes, you've got 45 days to file, and then year end, you've got up to 90 days to file year end. So Immutable Holdings, we went public for a number of reasons, but we operate just like any US publicly traded company on the NASDAQ or the NYSE, in that, yes, we are legally required to file quarterly. So there'll be plenty of disclosures and things of that to come.
Thank you so much, Jimmy. Let's get Matthew 7 in, and he can ask a question. Matthew, go ahead.
How we doing, fam? Thanks for bringing me on stage. Trying to decide if I should move to Puerto Rico or not right now, but
definitely move to Puerto Rico.
I'm on the fence. It's pretty sunny in San Diego, so but. I actually had a question for anyone that thinks they could give some input. So when you're approaching, leadership within a large cap, something that is, we're talking billion plus, and the leadership, they've heard of blockchain, they have probably, the specialists in their company that are familiar with it. How do you approach that conversation with leadership in a way that is digestible with Hedera, and you maybe on that first or second, without, overwhelming them in a sense?
Pretty big question. Go ahead.
It's a great question. I'll chime in, but I'll mention there's a few people on the line here that actually work at some of those multi-billion-dollar multinationals. So some of them should chime in too. I won't name any names, but some other people can unmute and
Yeah,
talk about how to navigate some of those
like
organizations. In
definitely
full disclosure,
multinational, we're big boys.
Yeah. So listen, guys, in full disclosure, I've never worked at a multi-billion-dollar multinational, and I don't really have the credentials to work at one. I don't really think I'm employable.
Yeah,
But
definitely wouldn't hire you, Jordon. No way.
but what I can tell you is I've approached a bunch of them. From 2017, we got doors slammed in our face because we took very much the wrong approach. I think the most organic approach is you really want to win over mind share on your way up. And I found the best way to do that is to go to, I mean, one, there's line of business owners in every single organization that clearly have their own P&Ls and they've got decision-making capabilities. But what I actually think is probably the most effective approach is literally winning over the engineering talent on a particular team. A line of business owner isn't going to completely ignore decisions that their technical colleagues disagree with. And I think a lot of the initial struggle was just to be self-critical. I don't think we had great SDKs in the early days. We had a thin developer advocate team when we first started, and I think Hedera's done a tremendous job, and several people on the line deserve credit for this. But I see Greg Scullard here. Greg, how you doing? We really improved on the documentation side. I think we won over a lot of fans in doing that. And as you start to get that buy-in, I think the best approach is to find an innovation group, an emerging technology group. That's either a group that reports up through a CIO or a CTO. Those are the best first conversations to have. I have found if you go straight to business leadership, the business guys, those conversations get lost. The second best approach I found is also going through the venture capital arms. Typical people who are allocating capital, who are used to diligencing new technologies and have seen stuff like blockchain tech before, who can make sense of how to do it. The reason I find that strategic is sometimes there's analysts that will brief others inside the organization on what's coming across their desk, what some opportunities in the market are, and where there's a compelling, story to be told there. They've been great champions internally. But in every case, you need an internal champion.
Yeah.
So at some point, you've got to convert someone internally that can take it up.
For sure. So to take it to specifically with a roadblock, to bring up, let's say, you've laid out, you've made the case on the P&L side, but, for a lot of these integrations, I mean, it's a overhaul, right? You have a huge transition with the infrastructure, and just the integration process is a big effort. And I've, done value add sales before where entire lines at plants have shut down for 2 days to put in equipment. And that's some companies just don't even want to do that. And sometimes, and that's a big part of, I guess, getting over that hump. So it's how do you approach after the P&L of getting or maybe you can comment on it not being, it's gotten to the point where it's not a huge hump anymore or something.
In a lot of cases, you don't even need to make the P&L case. I think long-term you do, but a lot of companies are just looking to be perceived as being on the bleeding edge, or, to be have a foot in the emerging technology space, and where they don't have an immediate use case. I think one of the biggest value propositions that people overlook of joining the Hedera governing body is literally just to figure out what everyone else is doing. I mean, in some of these council meetings, you've got representatives from these big companies literally opening the book on what they're thinking about, how they're thinking about it, what they're doing. And that kind of transparency and collaboration cross industry, cross company, I think is one of the biggest value propositions that is understated. So having an immediate way to add to the bottom line is good if that use case presents itself. But in a lot of times, these companies just need help. The traditional path is you bring in management consultants to teach your middle managers how to use the tech. But I would advocate against that model, because I think the best way to do that is to figure out what industry peers are. And Yeah, just a thought there. I wouldn't be obsessive over the P&L case there. I think it's more important to build competence and collaboration between these large companies first and foremost.
Thank you, Jordan. I wanted to get Greg in here. He has a question. Greg Scullard is a developer advocate for Hedera.
Yeah, hi. Not so much a question, maybe adding to what Jordan said. And hi, Jordan. Thanks for highlighting me in as much as I wanted to be a fly on the wall here, but never mind. I've been found out. So hi,
Greg. You deserve highlighting.
Thank you.
Good to hear your voice again.
Yeah, likewise. And hi, everybody else, by the way. So I mean, I speak to clearly a lot of small, medium, large organizations, and one of the things I found is that I mean, Hedera is not new, not early to the game. There's been an awful lot of other DLTs that sort of existed before Hedera came to the party, and a lot of organizations have already got in-house blockchain teams that, in my experience, have primarily an Ethereum background and are kind of rooted in an Ethereum religion. And I'm being fairly blunt here, which doesn't fit the enterprise model. And it's amazing how many people I've spoken to who will just argue that Ethereum is better than everything else, even though it's not the right tool for the enterprise. So the first thing I probably would say to those teams and the people that you meet in those organizations is think again, look again. You've done your tourism, you've looked around, you maybe found it wasn't fitting your requirements, but look at Hedera. It's very, very different to whatever else you've looked at, and give it a second chance. And then to pick up on the P&L and the massive transformation, I've worked in telecoms for years where we were trying to transform businesses. It's a long, arduous sales cycle. Start small, pick a small winning project, pick something that has even little visibility, but where you can show innovation and you can show value very quickly. And that little acorn can very quickly grow to, widespread adoption within the organization.
I have a question that's if we're open for that.
Yes, go ahead.
Just a question for Jordan. When he was talking about kind of like unseen, typically IP sharing of giant corporations when it comes to blockchain technology, or at least on the Hedera Governing Council, where that innovation is shared instead of blocked, as it is in a typical realm. Do you mind giving like a little brief overview on how you see your company is able to facilitate some of that interconnectivity, or able to bring the ease of blockchain, such as the NFT.com style, where it is no longer blockchain, it's a website, everyone understands it, and underlying architecture is no longer as fundamentally important. Can you just give a brief rundown of how you see your interaction with the community and blockchain community to disseminate learnings, information, and just the ability to not just crowd around IP and block it with lawyers, and instead have this very open conversation about an innovative technology is kind of paramount inside of the crypto space?
Yeah, happy to. Good question. Crypto and blockchain, I mean, it's such a collaborative ecosystem. It's really predicated on the backs of just amazing open source communities, a sharing of ideas. And one, as an individual, I like to operate in a very transparent way. It's been frustrating for me. I think many of you in the community have noticed that, to be bound by council governance in some cases. I'm definitely the guy that got yelled at for tweeting during a council meeting, and I think there's still a rule that people can't tweet during council meetings now because of that. So I think it's really important to share ideas. I think it's really important to put property out there and not have it be proprietary IP to a particular organization. How we operate, we have a pretty open source playbook in why we built the company. And maybe I've said this in an interview, so I apologize if this is repetitive, but for those that haven't heard it, I think there's some value here. Our playbook is, we really believe first and foremost that there are protocols that are going to exist in 5, 10, 15 years, and there are protocols that are not. I mean, we're in this crazy period of consolidation where we now have this concept of token mergers, where like token ABC will merge with token DEF, and only ABC survives, and the other foundation collapses in the other. We're big believers in step one is accumulating the big pieces of the underlying protocols you still think are going to be here in a decade's time, but then building businesses that drive or extend the utility of those protocols, and the digital assets that are native to those protocols. So what we're doing is very much focused on awareness building. First and foremost, that's kind of, if you were to think of Immutable Holdings as a funnel, we very much are sort of mass marketed, geared towards consumer facing businesses, where 1-800-Bitcoin is a pretty good example of that. We've been pretty tight-lipped about what we're doing there, but that's got to be one of my favorite assets that we have, where we believe we can distribute educational materials in a sustainable way, and make blockchain and crypto first less intimidating, so really increase the awareness and the knowledge curve around it. Really take someone from being like a Bitcoin or a blockchain skeptic to someone who's not just competent on Bitcoin or blockchain, but now knows what Hedera Hashgraph is. And you better believe that Hedera Hashgraph is part of that. Where you see me lead with Bitcoin, I'm just giving credit where credit's due. I wouldn't even be in the blockchain world if it wasn't for Bitcoin. And I think that that is a great lead into, wow, there's other technologies beyond just a proof of work blockchain, and Hedera is among the best. We want to do as much as we can in the open source, but given we are a commercial entity, you've got to focus on where the picks and shovel opportunities are for us to commercialize, and we'll absolutely commercialize, for example, in NFTs, but we'll do so with a largely open source code base that we certainly hope that large multi-billion-dollar multinational companies, including some on the Hedera Governing Council, will leverage. And they're certainly welcome to take what is open source and open license of what we've built to be able to do that. And like, we're not the only ones doing it. To give credit to others in the ecosystem, like most of OpenSea is open source, open license. I think their user interface, their UI, UX is proprietary, but everything other than that is really, is open. And I think that that's like the founding ethos of our space is, contribute to really great code bases, take what you can from others and create evolutionary versions of it. We hope to do it. We just are now doing so in a vehicle, a publicly traded vehicle, because we wanted to, one, democratize access to a really exciting blockchain holding company. Let's be honest, there's not a really exciting blockchain holding company on public markets today. And we certainly hope that some of those large multi-billion-dollar multinationals become shareholders, and disclose that they are, and that we've got an opportunity to collaborate them. So we're small today. I mean, we're certainly not of the size that we command a dominant position on the Hedera Governing Council, but we definitely are growing fast and hope to be there before long. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, that was really, really thorough. I really appreciate the answer. We're of the same mindset where open source and interconnectivity of engineers and just smart people will help propel humanity on a macro level a lot faster, and innovation and technology sharing just allows thoughts and ideas to be shared in an open community. So we're building tools for minting, for NFTs. We're building tax tools eventually, and just other things. We need to not have to worry about these intricate engineering details. And it's great to know that other people in way bigger spaces are also thinking about, I mean, you gotta protect IP. I totally get that. And at the same time, when you have a conclusion that is essential to a lot of foundational things that can be built in the future, you take that opportunity to open source it, and you get some good PR. But at the end of the day, you allow innovation to be just used by a lot more engineers, a lot more brains, and it's appreciated.
Agreed.
I really.
And now that I've answered your question, the only thing I want in return is a Hashgraph.
All right, DM me. Well, we can talk.
Because I want to get Matt on here because we're running a little late. And Matt, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up with Jordon. Is that we talk about open source tools, open source tooling, all that fun stuff. There's actually a little known secret that the entire kind of Hedera backend of Dovu is all open source. You can literally go to Trust Enterprises and create your own permission marketplace. You can connect that to if you're a developer, Laravel projects, and within a week you have your backbones of a permission marketplace for tokenization and for trading, and you know, something where your users don't need awareness of blockchain. You can just you just handle it all in the background. I just wanted to kind of touch base because there's a lot of stuff going in the background, and with everything kind of flying all over the place with new releases, a lot of things kind of go under the radar. Thank you for your comment there before, though.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you very much. I just wanted to give Jim Nasser a chance because he wanted to make a comment or question. Jim, go ahead.
Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, I was saying at the beginning, the Dovu folks are talking about the DLT integration with their IoT data streams. And to me, that's a really important, I think we can spend an entire session talking about this because I think there's an opportunity for the community to build like a middleware layer for IoT devices and other devices like this, including like medical devices, because that's not trivial, right? Taking data and essentially having an authenticated source or verified source, sounds easy, but it's not. I think there's a great opportunity for us in the community to actually build and maybe even get Hbar Foundation to fund building middleware to really make that happen, because otherwise you wind up with these one-offs that become hard to scale. It's the concept is brilliant, but to actually get to the data is not easy, right? So again, I don't want to rush it, but I think it's a real opportunity for us to kind of do a deep dive, maybe at a different session.
No, I understand. And I think one of the things that's super important that we've all gathered from the Spaces talk is collaboration is the key. And I think that's part of what the mission of the Hbar Foundation is, and what the Hedera community is really all about is collaboration. So I want to ask anyone if they have their final comments, because I don't want to keep everybody for too long. So Jiro, would you like to have a final comment?
Well, just I think that the IoT is very important, because we need to quantify it, and tokenization happens at a hardware level, and it's that bridge. It is complicated. Medical, energy, transport, all of these things are achievable and interlinked.
They certainly are, and we're going to work hard on that and into the future. Matt,
as an IoT company, I would wholeheartedly agree with that.
Thanks.
I think my last comment I just add is onto what we were saying about what Hgraph Punk's was talking about, opening up businesses and things. I think that's the other thing is that DLT is going to help to do in the longer term. Is it's going to, in a way, sort of force big businesses to join up more, open up more, because we're talking, conversations are starting about joining up value chains, sharing assets between organizations, and that it's just going to drive it in that direction. So some of it, or in fact all of it, as Jordon was saying, it's going to come from bottom up. It's these small maybe innocuous projects to start with, the little value add projects that demonstrate that there's a better way of doing things, and I think where I see that potential is actually the projects where people don't even know that necessarily right now that DLT is the answer, but they're talking about their problems, and I'm hearing more and more about these kind of problems that DLT would be the answer to. So 10 or 15 years down the line, when all these companies are joined up, then I think we'll be in a very different place.
I think the value proposition of businesses working together as opposed to competing with each other is going to really make a big difference, and Hedera is a big part of that.
Yeah, well, it's the sharing of the efficiency gains of, for example, being able to better use your assets, and there's some really simple, and it all joins up. Then I think that's what we've heard a lot tonight, is that there's a lot of jigsaw pieces here, it feels like, and we're going to start to see how they fit together, whether that's with Power Transition and Dovuz, and we've mentioned Guardian and some other ones as well, and that's where it's going to be really exciting, seeing how all of these things join together.
Well, I'm really excited about the future, and I want to thank everybody for coming. I don't want to keep everybody too long. Jordon, thank you for coming. I hope you come again on our spaces. Do you have any parting words for our community?
Only that what's happening right now, I just want everyone to realize, if we just take a step back, I know it's hard to see the marginal progress that this community has been making. One, this community is exploding. So even the fact that we've got a Twitter Spaces like this, like kudos to all of you for putting this together. What gets me really excited, I mean, some of these people are here. Hashpack, amazing job. I am using your wallet. So the fact that we now have a really great Chrome wallet in the ecosystem that people can use, this is a key piece of infrastructure that even allows a project like NFT.com to integrate Hedera NFTs. And obviously we hope to do so. If that was a question in anyone's mind, it's obviously something we want to do, but infrastructure has to be in place to enable us to do it. So I know that's a topic on everyone's mind. But I'm really, really excited. What makes me really excited, what makes me really proud is we're putting these pieces in place. And sure, we're not the first to do it. Like, we don't have a wormhole equivalent. That's the Solana bridge, or the bridge.terramoney.com is the one in the Luna ecosystem, but that's coming, right? Like, I mean, Hashport, what's happening there. So as we start to put these pieces in place, things like Dovu can execute. So it's taken a lot of patience. I know this community has had, in some cases, unlimited amounts of patience. But I'm really reassured, really excited by everything that's being built. And to the extent that Immutable Holdings can support some of this, don't hesitate to reach out, and you can definitely bet when I have the time, I'm definitely going to join these. So let's keep them going. And again, great content here. I'm super excited to learn more about Dovu and how I can use it and offset my own carbon use.
Oh, thank you so much. And I just wanted to tell Hashback Wallet that he could go ahead and speak for a minute, because I tried to get you on earlier. So just before we end our spaces, Hashback, let's hear from you.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks, Jordon, for the shout out. Yeah, it's been great to listen to all the speakers. We're super excited to see all these projects that are emerging in the space. Just to introduce myself, I'm Jacob De Rosario. I'm the Chief Design Officer at Hashpack. So we're a Hbar wallet which launched last Saturday, so still fairly fresh. Initially, we're going to be a web app and a dedicated Chrome extension as well. The web app works great on desktop and on mobile. And really, our focus is on user experience. We want to make everything as easy as possible. Crypto can be a confusing and hostile place at times, and accessibility and inclusivity is paramount to us. And Jordon alluded to it before. The more people we can empower and enable on Hedera, the better it is for the whole community. So the first version of Hashpack really has the main features that we think are important. So we've got things like seamless ledger support. You can kind of onboard in a couple of steps. We've got an address book. We've got live price charts. You can create a main testnet account as well. And we're hoping to have purchase with fiat as well, which is coming soon. And we've got tons of things planned for the future as well. So the interoperability with other apps, token support, NFT support and gallery, dedicated mobile apps as well. And just a point on the interconnectivity as well, we're building tools for Hashpack, and we want to work with other projects. So if there's any developers that are interested, feel free to get in contact with us as well. And yeah, I guess our vision really is we're just dedicated to developing products and services which reduce friction and spark adoption of the Hedera network by other developers and the wider community. So yeah, thanks for listening, and yeah, please check us out on hashpack.app.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to getting to know more about Hashback, and they are scheduled for another spaces with us in the very near future. So we look forward to that. But I'll end this space because we're a little over, and I really appreciate everyone sticking with us. Thank you, Matt, so much for coming. Your team at Dovu was really very engaged and wonderful to work with, and I look forward to working with you again. Jiro, thank you so much, and I can't wait to follow all your wonderful work that you're doing at Power Transition. And Jordon, thank you so much for coming. And Wes, as always, we love the Hbar Foundation. Go! Hello, future. Tom, you're always awesome. And Jim and everybody and all the Hbarbarians for coming. Really appreciate it. So I'm going to end the space now. And hello, future.